important scholar who's been dealing with these issues for a long time, unfortunately. And unfortunately, your work becomes more and more serious, or unfortunately more and more relevant. So Joel Kotek is going to speak today on Why the Jews, a brief history of anti-Semitism from the Middle Ages to the 21st century. So Joel teaches at the Free University in Brussels, and as you know, Brussels is becoming, I don't know, a contested space, as it were, for some of the issues that we're dealing with. He also teaches at the Institut d'études politiques de Paris, after completing research here at St. Antony's College, at Oxford, and one semester teaching a course in Europe's political systems at the University of Ottawa. He defended his doctoral thesis at the Institut d'études politiques de Paris, the IEP. The thesis was published in French as Le Jeune Garde by Le Soleil Le Soleil in 1998. And a shorter version was published entitled Students and the Cold War, which was published by Macmillan St. Martin's Press in '96. Joel is a member of several scientific communities, including the Memoire de Shoah de Paris, the Jewish Museum of Warsaw, and the Nehelen Holocaust Museum Foundation, as well as the Adeline Project in Paris, Evans Foundation in Antwerp, and Yahud Unam in Paris. Joel was the head of the formation of the Department of Memorial de Shoah, the Centre de Documentaire Juif Contemporaire in Paris from 2003 to 2006. And since 2003, he's been the Belgian correspondent for the Moshe Dayan Center. They do an annual report on anti-Semitism and racism, so he's the go-to person in Brussels. And he holds the Free University of Brussels program, a course on Holocaust and genocide in the 20th century. And most importantly, he's an ISGAP research fellow.
Yes.
So welcome. And Joel was also with us last year.
Yes, exactly.
So it's an honor to have you back.
I stayed longer last year.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. So of course my English won't be fluent, I'm a French speaker, so I will apologize. If you don't understand, it's my fault, it's not your fault. And thank God I've got a PowerPoint, and what I will try to do, in a sense, is what I'm trying to explain to my students. Why anti-Semitism? And another hairdresser. And this is really the question. Why always Jews? And actually, I'm used to this. Thank you very much. Oh, that's better even. I'm listening myself. What a beautiful voice. And also, actually, I'm giving the lecture, not this one, because this one will be longer, because you give me a lot of time, which is good enough for you, but for me, to policemen in France, because it's an obligation for new policemen in France to know about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. So at the Holocaust Memorial in Paris, each year we organize like 3 trainee program for future policemen. So this is, last year I started, this is me, as you recognize, and this is the class I was trying, because it's extremely difficult to explain modern anti-Semitism to young students. It's very difficult, especially if you want to explain, for instance, Dieudonné, Dieudonné phenomenon, because Dieudonné is not only extreme right. His speech is syncretic. It's a syncretism of extreme left, extreme right, and Muslim also speeches. And this makes, this man, of course, will defend the poor, but also will attack the Jews. So it's very difficult to deconstruct speeches like Dieudonné. More or less I try, and I succeed. So my first important, I would say, remark that I try to explain to the policemen, not especially to you because you know more, but let's say to the policemen, to the normal students, is that the fact that finally people say that Jews are different and they don't want usually, to assimilate. This is wrong, because if you analyze the history, what the Jews were asking was the right to resemblance, to be accepted into society, not to be different, not actually to be able to be a society within the society. And when you look, you will see evidence of this. Jews in India,
Jews in Ethiopia, Jews in the Roman Empire. This is Dura Europos today in Turkey, and you will see that they're dressed like Greeks, like Hellenistic dress. Jews in Istanbul, Jews in Turkey, Chinese Jews making a bar mitzvah, and a classical representation of the Jew in the Middle Age. And this man is dressed as a normal German citizen, and to distinguish him, he wears a special, which is called la rouelle in French, and I suppose you know how to say this in English. So a special badge. And this is the reason also why the Germans, the Nazis, imposed the yellow star. Because if the Jew will be different, why to impose a special hat? Because in the Middle Age they had to weather this, la rouelle, or a conic hat. And this is very important, the right of to resemblance. And usually the biggest moment of anti-Semitism are within the time when the Jews succeed to assimilate. The time of, I would say, Phinon of Alexandria, because remember, the Jews forgot even Hebrew, so they had to translate the Bible in Greek, the 70 version. Remember Spain, the Islamic Spain, it ended with the expulsion of Maimonides. Remember the Christian Spain. Also the Jews were extremely well integrated, and the best example is France with the Dreyfus affairs, and the example of course, the Weimar Republic, where people believe that, finally it was the moment, as Hermann Cohen used to say, of the integration of the Jews within European society. And unfortunately, you know how it ended. The second thing I try also to explain is, and this is very important, there is no historical inevitability to the hatred of Jews. And of course, Barry, insists on this too. Because you can say where there are Jews, there are hostility. And in fact, it's wrong. In China, there were no anti-Semitism. That's why they disappear by assimilation, more or less. Some of them even convert to Muslim, to Islam. In India, there were no animosity. At least we don't have any traces. The same in pre-Christian North Africa and in the Roman Empire. In the Roman Empire, it was possible to be a Jew. And even the fact that Rome was at war with Judea, because the Romans destroyed the Judean kingdom, they destroyed Jerusalem in the 70 years, and even if they despised, in a sense, Judaism, because to them Judaism was a very strange religion. The Jews were considered as a lazy people. You know why? They invent the weekend, Shabbat. You don't work on Shabbat, and the Romans couldn't understand it. And also, the Jews didn't kill their handicapped children. Very strange. Why? The pater familias, it was, they could kill his child. But even, it was possible for the Roman, and for a Roman Jew to be finally even a senator. So we don't find, we have maybe anti-Judaism, philosophical I would say, but not anti-Semitism. And I will try to explain, and this is very important, the difference between anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism. It's totally different, even, of course, if it's connected. So, what seems to be important is there is no responsibility of the Jews in the rejection of which they are subject. So, how could you explain why the Jews? Because it's an hostility limited to religion that follow, Judaism. It means only Christianity and Islam. Anti-Judaism, anti-Semitism should be considered within the precise temporal and spatial framework of the installation on Christianity and Islam, two religions directly born from Judaism, so rival. And rivalry, if it's a correct word, anyway you understand, it's the peer thing that you can have. The worst quarrel is always within a family. It will be between Abel and Cain, Romulus and Remus, or Trotsky and Stalin. It's normal. Or if I would say Yushawishi and Mao Zedong, because, as Freud would say, the difference, very small difference can, of course, and especially in monotheist faith, where it's possible to have how would you say, a kind of syncretism. So Judaism is a competing faith, and of course the matrix of Christianity and Islam. And so it's, as it was said actually yesterday, a logical opposition to the Father that will inspire the relationship between Judaism and Islamic Christianity. because they will logically come to oppose the mother. Because if you want to impose yourself, you have to kill the father. A father who doesn't want to die, actually. And this is the big problem. So, and this is a very important sentence, is the origin of the hatred is the hatred of the origin. And this is the neurosis of both father of Islam and father of Christianity. They know the history, but they do not recognize it. And this is Daniel Sibony, philosopher and psychoanalyst from North Africa, Jewish North Africa. So it's a neurosis. You know the classical definition of neurosis, psychosis. You know it, I suppose. This is what I say to my students, to my policemen. I say, a normal person, well, I don't know any, will conceive that 1 + 1 = 2. Psychotic will say 1 and 1 = 3. A neurotic will say 1 and 1 = 2, but he doesn't like this idea. This is the problem of neurosis. It's someone who dislikes reality, who refuses reality. And the reality is what? What? Judaism is at the origin of Christianity and Islam. So, both Christianism and Islam claim the heritage of Judaism, and thanks to Michel, I was able to translate the next sentence. But how could you claim to inherit from a person who doesn't acknowledge you? Because, of course, the Jew won't accept the idea that Jesus is the Christ, or that Muhammad is the prophet, the last prophet, and the new, and really the one who will definitely improve the new religion. And above all, who does not intend to die. So, Christian point of view, and this is the problem, the people who knew God, he's the one who refused to recognize him, and even more, is responsible for his death. And the Muslim point of view, the people of the prophets, is the one who refuses to recognize the last prophet, Muhammad. So, this is a problem. Those who refuse to disappear, and this is the main, control the original and holy myth. The Gospel and the Quran are based on biblical story. The myth, the original myth, are in the Bible. So, for instance, Abraham's sacrifice. It was, he had to sacrifice Isaac or Ishmael. That's the problem, not for the Jews or the Christians, but that's the problem for the Muslim. Because according to some Muslim tradition, not all of them, certain hadiths, of course, the question was Ishmael, even if Ishmael was not in the Bible, in the Quran. It's not mentioned in the Quran. But they didn't want to acknowledge the fact that it was Isaac. So this is a theological problem. So, yet, you cannot deal with the Jews like you will deal with pagans. So while having lost his holiness, the Jewish people, for wearing at the time the word of God, remains largely sacred, if not envied. The Jews are envied. Jalousie, as we see in French. So it's a people envied, despised, especially within, I would say, the Islamic tradition, and also within the Christian tradition, feared. And this is, I would say, the difference between anti-Judaism and antisemitism. Usually, up till now, the French in Islam, they didn't fear the Jews. They just despised them. And so, what is the Jew? It's someone who is totem, but also taboo. So, what is the solution? What is the response? So, for the father of the church, the response was finally what they call theology of substitution. Okay, they controlled, they are the people of, I would say, the Bible, of the Torah, but now it's caduc, it's finished. Caduc, the famous word that Arafat used to say, caduc. I don't know if you remember it. So, it means it's okay. It was the people of the first alliance, but now it's finished. The Verus Israel now is the church, the New Jerusalem is Rome, or Constantinople, or whatsoever, Moscow. The new language, sacred language, is Latin, or Russian, or Greek, and so your story is finished. This is the, but it means we can keep the Torah, and they will name it Old Testament. But of course, now there will be the Evangel, will be the real message. I will speak about And this is a good example of theology of substitution. This is in Strasbourg, and you will find this kind of statues almost everywhere. In France, I suppose in England, in Germany for sure. And this is, it's always called the triumph of the church and the defeat of the synagogue. And the church, and you will see that there are no traces of antisemitism. The synagogue, the Jewish girl, is as beautiful, I would say, as the Christian girl. She's magnificent. But, as you can see, she's blindfolded. It means she's in error. The Jews, they don't recognize the fact that Jesus is the Messiah. So they're blindfolded. Also, the lance, which is in English, the spear, it's broken. It means the alliance between God and the Jewish people is broken. It's fading. And the Torah, or the Ten Commandments, it's almost obsolete. It's there, but, you know. And then, on the other side, you've got the triumph of the church. This is another very nice painting. And this is a Van Eyck. You know, for me, it's my favorite painter, Flemish painter. And it's called, again, the triumph of the church and the defeat of the synagogue. And I will show you a detail, and you will understand the message that in the 13th century, 14th century, the Gentile was giving. Those are the Jews. And look, the Jews, they had the special hat. The Jews, they were dressed like Flemish people. You couldn't differentiate a Jew from a non-Jew. So, whether you had the Barouel or, you know, a special triangular hat.
Yarmulke.
What?
In Russia it calls Yarmulke.
The yarmulke is like a kippah, no? It's more a kippah. It's not a kippah. This is really like you will see.
I don't want to interrupt, but just one, could you write in French the name of that? Because I don't quite.
But someone knows, maybe Michel. In Italy also. La Ruelle.
La, is it La?
La, yes. It's like a wheel.
Oh, wheel?
Yeah, it's like a wheel, more or less. It was a yellow wheel. And then you can see the Jews. They don't want to listen. The priest is blindfolded again, you know, and they don't want to hear. What? The victory of Christianism. This is theology of substitution. So the solution of the Muslim world is different. It's the theology of falsification. It means, for them, the Torah and the New Testaments are wrong. It's a falsification, because the real Torah and the real, I would say, gospel, say what? That Abraham was a Muslim, that Moses was a Muslim, and then Isa was a Muslim. And that Muhammad is the last prophet. So they consider, you know, Jesus as a true Muslim prophet, etc. And this is theology of falsification. This explains why they do not consider the Torah as sacred anymore, contrary to the Christian. And this is a good example that you can find on the internet. They explain that, well, it was Ishmael who was, you know, supposed to be sacrificed by Abraham, and certainly not Isaac. And you say, indeed, the biblical version of the story, sacrifice your only son Isaac, or sacrifice your firstborn Isaac, is an enigma that the Christian must live with. And you can find on the internet, etc. So, the solution, this was the first solution. Theology means falsification theology, or falsification or substitution theology. The second one is, despite the hatred, as I said, Judaism cannot be treated as any pagan religion and or belief. For the Christian and for the Muslims, Judaism was still an offense, but it was not liable to death penalty. If you were an heretic, you were killed. You couldn't be an heretic in a Christian city, but you could be Jew. So it means that the Jews will testify to the truth of Christianity by their condition of near servitude. This is Saint Augustine. Okay, the Jews could live within the Catholic, the Christian city, but they will be second-class, even not citizen, second-class subject, the slave of the prince, etc. And by this, they demonstrate the fact that the consequences of not being a Christian, to be under a condition. The consequence, too, the Jews, well, are going to constitute the only minority tolerated within Christian and Muslim state in the Maghreb, not in the Mashraq, and to become gradually the usual suspect or the ideal scapegoat. If you do not have any other minority, well, sociologically, the tendency of the society is to find within itself, an element, as we said yesterday, of cohesion, to put the society more or less united. And they will use, finally, it will take time. Because what is important to remember, until the Crusaders, we don't find traces, only in Spain, of massacres of Jews, of pogrom. Until the Crusaders. So the condition of the Jew was not so bad. Everything will change in the 11th, 20th, 13th century. So second consequence, it is exactly in these two double contexts. Theological, it means a people considered as taboo and totem, envied and despised. And sociological, the only tolerated minority, that the Jews are gradually being assigned a triple role. Religious, as I said, the Jews as witness of the Christ, but also cursed, because they killed him. So that's why they will be on the condition, of their servitude. And economic, the Jews as foreign and economic agent. And finally, for instance, when Charles the Great, Charlemagne, the famous Carolingien emperor, sent an embassy to Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad in the 9th century, it was a Jew who was conducting, the journey. Because the Jews could control the borders and they were familiar to Islam world and to Christian world. So the Jews were important until the Crusade. And third, socio-political. The Jews as an outlet to internal crisis, and they will become the scapegoat, the usual suspect, etc. So of this religious hostility to the Jews, but set up gradually as a real cultural code, and this is important. I think the fact that it's a cultural code within, up till now, I would say the Western society, will arise at first traditional, then modern anti-Semitism, then by a torturous one and complex progress, Nazi anti-Semitism, finally, today, by a curious return of the history, current new Judeophobia, what I call personally radical anti-Zionism. Not anti-Zionism, but radical anti-Zionism, which is different. So, I stop 1 second here. And so, I will try to make the differentiation between what I call anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism. And I think it's important to understand the difference between anti-Zionism and radical anti-Zionism. It's the same, more or less. One is a neurosis, the other one is a psychosis. One is more or less rational, the other one is more or less irrational, phantasmatic, etc. So, what is anti-Judaism? Until the 13th century. So, anti-Judaism, as far as I'm concerned, is a rational opposition. Anti-Judaism condemns Jews for what they are, or Judaism for what it is. A rival and besides a matric faith. This is what I try to explain. The Jews are blamed for what they are. They are Jews. Means they don't believe in the Christ, they don't believe in Muhammad. And also what they do. They pray on Shabbat, they go to synagogue on Shabbat, it means they don't go to church, they don't go to mosque, and they celebrate Passover, and they not fast Ramadan. So this is a rational thing. And you know that the Jews are not so pro-Islam and so pro-Christian. I think, and especially in a monotheist context, intolerance, it's polytheists are far more tolerant because you've got, I think, 3 million gods in India, one more, one less, who cares? But it's very different considering, monotheism. So the quarrel is of theological order. And on the whole, logical if we think of the exclusivism of the monotheist faith. And this is again the example that I showed you before, but it's even nicer. And you will find hundreds of representation of victory of Judaism, victory of Christianity, and the defeat of Judaism. And again, what you don't like, this is anti-Judaism, what you don't like in the person is this Jewishness. But if she converts, she will become accepted. Conversion is possible in an anti-Judaic context. In anti-Semitism, what you don't like in the Jew is human beings. So the only way is to kill the Jews. or to get rid of him by expulsion. Of course, there is always, I would say, problems. Deicide, the fact that Jew is supposed to have been, responsible for the crime, the killing of Jesus, and the myth of Judah announced anti-Semitism. Why? Because, as I say, anti-Semitism is, anti-Judaism is you don't like the Jews what they are, but they didn't kill Jesus. The Romans are responsible of Jesus' death, but the problem is, you want to convert to your religion. It's very difficult to say, okay, become a Christian, but don't forget you kill Jesus. You cannot cope with this. So you have to find a way. And the way, the Christian, really not a solution. Of course, this is a classical representation of la scène, la scène,
The Last Supper.
the Last Supper in English. Everyone is Jew. You can't find any non-Jew there. The only non-Jew that Jesus met was the Roman and one Samaritan. And the Jews hate the Samaritans, and it was a good Samaritan. Like today I would say, I met a good Arab. It was a good Samaritan. It was terrible. Because the Jews despised the Samaritans. He was a Jew. He believed he will transform Judaism. So everyone is Jew, but why? Why to invent this man called Judah, or to emphasis? Because this man is called Judea, Jews whatsoever, so the Jews are responsible, not the Romans. And this is a very interesting enluminure, middle-age enluminure, 13th century from Liège. Enluminure, how do you say this in English?
Enlightenment?
Exactly. And it's very interesting, because this is Judah. And very important, it's the origin of, I would say, anti-Semitic myth. The Jews are plotting, and anti-Semitism is a plot. They're plotting. And they're plotting for what? For money. And Judah received 30 denarius. He was paid for his treason. And they give Jesus to whom? Who is the person they give Jesus to?
The Roman.
Does he look like a Roman?
No?
I mean, who is giving Jesus away?
Yes. Pilate is represented
The
as a
Jew.
Jew.
The Jews are giving him
Yes,
away.
but Pilate is shown as a Jew. He's got the Jewish head.
Ah.
So it means, well, okay, Romans convert, the Jews did it. You understand? This is a trick, because this is the only way to be able to convert the Saxon whatsoever, the Italians, the different. So, what is anti-Semitism? So I was speaking about anti-Judaism. Anti-Semitism is, of course, you cannot understand anti-Semitism if you don't link anti-Semitism to anti-Judaism. Of course. But it becomes sociological, less than theological. It started after the Crusaders. So, anti-Semitism is born in the 12th century, not in the 19th century, as usually you will read, etc. Of course, the word was coined in the 19th century, like genocide. Genocide was invented in 1943, but I speak about the Armenian genocide. It's not because the concept is invented that you can use that you cannot use it for a previous phenomenon whatsoever. So why the 13th century? So the hatred of the Jews, born of course in the wake of the Crusades, is still religiously inspired, but distinguished itself from it by its totally irrational side. And this I will explain with anti-Zionism, etc. too. The hatred is not doctrinal, but of fantastical order. It's a fantasy. It has nothing to do with the Jews. So, what is anti-Semitism? From the 12th century, Jews are not hated for what they do, or really are, mean Jews, but for what they don't do, or what they are not, means. A Jew is not someone connected with the devil. A Jew is not someone who likes to kill children at Passover. A Jew is not someone who likes to poison, spreading diseases like plague or Black Death, etc., la peste. And it's in the 13th century that the Jews become responsible of the misfortune of the world. The Juden sind unser Unglück in the 12th century. The origin of the Crusader is the rumor that the Jew asked the Caliph, the Sultan of Egypt, Hakim, to destroy the Holy Sepulchre. The plot. It's a plot. And of course, the Muslim believed that the origin of the Crusaders was the fact that the Jews asked the Christian to liberate Jerusalem. So we are in the heart of anti-Semitism, not anti-Judaism. So the persecution hit its first peak during the First Crusade, and as you know, it was really the beginning of massacres, pogroms, etc. And so, large community in Germany, in like Strasbourg were German then, were massacre, etc., Spiel, whatsoever. And as the Black Sea epidemic devastated Europe in the mid-14th century, annihilating more than half of the population, Jews were taken as scapegoat. And also they were scapegoat because it was because of anti-Judaism, people took them into group, and because it was the only minority that you can accuse, more or less. And so the neurosis become a psychosis. This is really the difference. It's okay. It means you can cure from a neurosis. For instance, Vatican II, you know, so, and more or less. That's why we can cope with Catholicism now, because they recognize it means the origin of the neurosis. That you cannot understand Christianity if you don't go back to the modern religion, Judaism. But it's very difficult, you know, to cure psychosis. It's okay?
Yes.
Forgive me. No, that's okay, I forgive you. Wasn't sure. You remove the bomb.
This guy.
So, from then on, the anti-Semitism already is essentially a social construction, and this is very important. Anti-Semitism, contrary, I would say, to anti-Judaism, is a social construction. And this is a good example of an Italian painter, Giovanni Canavesio, and this is, you know, we are in the 15th century, and this is a church dedicated to the hatred of the Jews. It's in France, near Nice, famous city that everyone knows, like Molenbeek today, and it represents the suicide of Judah. And look, Judah is no more represented like the beautiful synagogue. Now Judah is almost portrayed as a Sturmer-like, you know, Jew. It's terrible, and is linked to the devil. And there is a young child, you know, going out of his with his stomach, and the stomach looks a bit like within the money, la bourse that he was supposed to receive, etc. So, example, massacre. There was the plague in Tournai, a city in Belgium, 1349. Well, the Jews were accused of being responsible of the plague, and they were, and you know, most of them were massacred. They were burned. This is also a very classical, you know, example of anti-Semitism. It's desecration of the host. In Brussels, you know, all kings are crowned in the Cathedral of Saint-Michel, and this cathedral is dedicated to a myth, an anti-Semitic myth. The fact that the Jews in 1370 were supposed to have desecrated Holy Host. Of course, it's a myth that can only concern Christians, because the Christian consider the Holy Host as the body of Christ. So you have to be Christian to believe in this. But the Jews were accused, they were tortured, and finally, of course, they confessed that they did it, and they were killed. And it was the beginning of the expulsion of the Jews. That's very good.
Are you leading the lights?
No, it's okay, no, it's better maybe, no? Because you can see the Jews, you know, conspiring. No, honestly, look. And this is, all kings are crowned in this cathedral. And this is also very classical. And this explains why today, when you listen to news connected to Israeli conflict, they will always insist on Israeli soldiers are killing Palestinian children. It's the only conflict when they will say how many children, etc. And this dates back from, I would say, the imaginary of Christianity, the fact that the Jews were supposed to, how to say, need the blood of young Christian, you know, to prepare matzah, the famous, you know, Passover bread. And of course, the sacrificed children, they are represented as Jesus. You know, it's a way to remember also the day side. And what is funny is the Pope, and I would say those who control the church, they knew it was an absurd myth. They knew about kashrut laws, etc. but they couldn't control it. So all those children, they were canonized. And it's only after Vatican II that all those children, like Simon of Trento, was finally decanonized. They were on calendars, and still actually, Simon is still on Christian calendars, notably in Flanders. And you will find hundreds of cases of, I would say, ritual murders. And the last one, you know, is Kielce, 1946 in Poland. 44 Jews were killed, being accused of trying a ritual murder. 1946, Poland. So during the high Middle Ages in Europe, there were full-scale persecution in many places with blood libels, massacres, forced conversion, and expulsion. What we have to remember is the fact that the Jews almost disappeared from Europe. The only place where there were some Jews left was Italy, some city in Germany, and of course the Low Countries, Amsterdam. And then you can see, no Jews in England, no Jews in Belgium, after the supposedly desecration of the host. In France, Austria, etc., etc., etc. And of course we remember Spain and Portugal, but there were no Jews left. If there are some Jews left, it's thanks to Poland. The only country who more or less accept was in Europe was Poland, then of course the Ottoman Empire, and as you know, Amsterdam means the Netherlands. So it was very difficult for the Jews to survive, almost impossible, though there were no more Jews. And this is important. When you do not have any more Jews to accuse of the misfortune of the world, who would you accuse? Who is the other minority? This is what I try to explain to my students. Who would you accuse? Because you need to accuse. This is a normal phenomenon. Who is the other minority left within the Christian city?
Malaros?
What?
Malaros?
Yes, but if not, even more. It's even a majority.
Women.
Women. And contrary to what you believe, you know, the witches began when there were almost no more Jews in Europe. Because a society has to find somewhere, you know, the causes of the trouble. And the minority is a scapegoat. And I can say the woman is another kind of Jews. Actually, the women were, how to say, emancipated 50 years after the Jews. Actually, I met the first Belgian woman who had his PhD in law. It was impossible for a woman in Belgium to vote, like in any other countries, I suppose. This is the scapegoat community, and this is an example, you know, and you can see that the peak of the witches is 1450 to 1750, where almost there were no more Jews in Europe. This is a parenthesis. So, what are we talking about? I repeat, so as I said, anti-Judaism, it's a rational opposition, and I call it neurosis. Of course, this is what I say. It's philosophical, like I know, for instance, like Tacitus, also, as you know, yesterday it was remembered. Theological, you know, people are against the religions of the Father, and it's a competitor in religion, and pre-Antisemitic, Judah, who is supposed to be not the murderer of God, but responsible more or less. Or they will say the Sanhedrin, you know, those who delivered Jesus to Ponce Pilate. Then, anti-Semitism or religious inspiration, 12th century, and then it's fantastical. The Jews become the ogre, become a vampire, a demon, a poisoner, a child murderer, and also a usurer. Because before the Crusaders, in France, there were some Jews who had vineyards, farmers. It was different before the Crusaders. You can wear a weapon, etc. After the Crusaders, Jews were forced to enter certain kind of professions, and especially, you know, linked to monetary, if you understand what I mean, and I'm certain. Then you had modern anti-Semitism, but it's anti-Semitism, and it's philosophical, and it's Voltaire, who proposed to Jews that they are responsible of monotheism. The Jews invented Catholicism. Political, Drummond on the right, and then on the left you will find many others like Tusnel or Proudhon, one of the founders of anarchism, Reichel, Chamberlain, as we said yesterday, and of course the Nazi anti-Semitism, and then what I call radical anti-Zionism, irrational, and fantasy. And I will go back to this in the second part. So modern anti-Semitism, the Jews is the foreigners, the invader, the banker, the communist, the other one, on Russian point of view. And this is I wrote a book on postcards. So, anti-Semitic postcards. Between 1900 and 1914, there were billions of postcards distributed. And one of my best friends has 5,000 anti-Semitic postcards. The postcards was the equivalent of email, more or less. You learn everything. The first pornographic representation was thanks to postcards. It was very easy to hide. And they were the only one forbidden. This one was not forbidden. It was obligatory. It was distributed by the post office. And this is, of course, typically anti-Semitic. Look, you can see how a Jew looks like. Of course. This, the stereotype of the Jews, they were, in a sense, invented by those, I would say, designers. Comment on dirait, dessinateurs, those artists. If you can
What
name them
are you
artists.
doing in the picture? I didn't get
This
it.
is, they despise, circumcision. Because the Jews, they circumcise the children as they will circumcise gold money. They cheat. And Yupin is really, I would say, an insult. Yupin doesn't exist. It's an insult. It's how you say, like yid, I would say in Russian, or etc. And this is the representative of the Jews. The Jews were poor. The Jews came from Eastern Europe for economical and, of course, anti-Semitic reasons. That they were considered as, and you will find thousands, honestly, hundreds of those kind of postcards. And this is the stereotype of the Jews. This is the Russian postcards, and this is the Austrian postcards. And immediately you will say, oh, Jewish people. The Jews look like this,
It's a real
etc.
postcard.
What?
It is a real postcard.
Real postcards will stand on it, definitely. And so, why do I show you this beautiful man? Beautiful, the ideal German soldier.
He's Jewish.
Because he was Jewish, of course. This man was Werner Goldberg. And this man, when they realize they make a mistake, he will be expelled from the German army before, the France campaign. He did the Polish campaign, but when they realized that his father was Jewish, not his mother, he was, out of the German army. And the same with this one, and this is more funny, because the Werner Goldberg didn't know he was Jewish. He didn't know. He didn't know that his father, because his father was going to convert. This is different. This is also, it's a Nazi magazine, and they wanted to show the ideal German baby. And the photographer was an anti-Nazi. And on purpose, he gave this picture of a Jewish girl, Jewish baby. And she survived. And this means that a Jew looks like a German, looks like, an Indian, looks like whatsoever. As I said, the right to resemblance, this is very important. And then they will see as immigrants, like invaders, etc. Russian, and this is a very nice, because as I said, we were expelled from Western Europe, so we came back from Eastern Europe, and this man hesitated, Warsaw or Berlin. I suppose he will go more to Berlin or Paris, and it's the same, people were fear. And so this is funny also, the fact that the Jew is always rich and poor, national cosmopolite. And this one, poor people, but there it's written, you can see, Börse, la bourse, the stock exchange. Because even if a Jew is poor, he's always connected to money. He's the one who will bring capitalism, etc. And whether he's going to be poor or rich, he will work a stock exchange. This is la bourse ou vendre des bourses. How would you call this in English? In French, it's the same word for the stock exchange and for this wallet. And it means that the Jews are anti-war and warmongers. They are anti-war, and they are linked to the Freemason, conspiration theory, but they like to make war, to make money. Rothschild is responsible of the war between Prussia and France. Then he was responsible of the First World War. Then the Jews, the World Jewish Congress, were responsible of the Second World War. And the Jews, were responsible of the war against Iraq. always the idea that the Jews are warmongers, etc. And, you know, linked to the Freemasonry. And that the Jew controlled the world. And this is the Russian postcards. And you know that, you know, the responsible, the guilt, you know, of the misery of the mujik, of the Russian peasantry, you know, is because of the Jews. The trouble is, and then you can see that's a fantasy. There were no Jews in Russia, there were no Jews, I'm sorry, in Moscow, in Kiev, in St. Petersburg. They were forbidden. They could only live in certain area of the Russian Empire, as you know, the Pole, or the Pale. And this is the only Jewish postcard that was actually in my book, and it's a time of pogrom. And this, of course, pogrom, because it works, the propaganda. You know, to show the responsible, it worked. And people believe that the misery of Russia was because of the Jews, so the Jews were killed. And this is the origin of Zionism, and the origin of the immigration to the United States, and to Western Europe. So that's why propaganda counts, of course. And this is North Africa, French North Africa. This is the city of Albert Camus, that everyone knows. And we are in 1901, so it's real, of course. And it's written, there Felix, being in this Jewish quarter, you know, I dare not to say de pousser le prix à la mode, Michel.
Comment?
Je me suis gardé de pousser le prix à la mode. I dare not to say, you know, the famous sentence, death to the Jews. Because what you have to understand, that in North Africa, until a certain, you know, law, it's called Décret Crémieux, 1860, until the Décret Crémieux, the Jews were dhimmi, were considered as the, you know, the second grade subject. So they were the Christian, the Muslim, and the Jews. And Crémieux was a Jewish Freemason ministry, and he decided to emancipate the Jews of Algeria. And suddenly the Jews, you know, they were between the Muslim and the Christian. The Christians were infuriated. The Jews, you know, being equal. And that's why there were huge, you know, even pogroms and campaign against the Jews. And those who could vote, means the Christian, they elect Drummond, you heard about Drummond, the father of French antisemitism, as the deputy, the member parliament representative in Paris, and they elected him. And they elected Max Régis, his political party was called Parti Antisémite de France, the anti-Semitic party of France. They elected Max Régis, mayor of Alger. So the Jews were not considered as pieds noirs, if you know this expression, it means Blackfoot. They were considered as, you know, second-class citizens by the Christian. And this is why, and we've got several examples of the fact that the Jews were not accepted by the Christian majority, the minority actually. But the same for the Arabs. Those are Jewish. They don't look like Jewish, but they are Jewish. And this is, as I said, it's a moment. And it's called, after the turmoil, Jews on the ruins of their houses. And this is, on the contrary, it's a Muslim mob who decided, you know, to kill some Jews because they were infuriated. Suddenly the Jews could enter the French schools. It means they could become, I don't know, burghers, citizens. And they paid, you know, for this. And up till now in the Arabic quarter, they will have a lot of speech against Décret Crémieux, especially in the Maghreb. Again, a pogrom in Alger, 1934. And this is America. Why do I show America? It's a beautiful hotel in Miami Beach, and you will say, why? And of course the Americans, they know very well about it, but not my European students, nor my European policemen. It's in 1944, in May. The months later, the Americans will invade, as the Germans said, Europe, liberate Europe. But in this hotel, it's forbidden for Jews. You know, it's with colonial atmosphere, restricted clientele. So it means it's a postcard, you know, to reassure, you know, the Christian, clients that in this hotel there won't be any Jews. The same here, 1942, the apex, I would say, of the destruction of the Jews in Europe, 1942, and here it's written, strictly Gentile clientele. It means no Jews. And this is America. But of course, they don't say no Jews. They euphemize, of course, because it's America. And some people will say, what about the black? Well, it's impossible for a black to enter such a hotel, but you don't have to mention it, because the difference is, a Jew looks like, doesn't look, it's very difficult, you know, to differentiate the Jew. So, of course, no blacks, they will be, of course, they are even more discriminated, for sure, by definition. But there were even a case of a lynch against a Jew who was accused of more or less ritual murder, a very famous case in Georgia, if I'm right, and it was called Leo Frank, and he was hanged in 1915. This is America. And America is, I would say, a non-ethnic model of nationalism. America is a civic. So it means you cannot differentiate between the people. It's civic, it's immigration. But in Germany it's different. It's an ethnic model of nation. And there, this is Borkum. And Borkum is like Deauville in France, or Knokke in my country, in Belgium. So it's the very chic. And this is the hotel of the de la Plage, Strand Hotel. And it's written here, Juden. And they say Juden, they don't use, they don't euphemize. Juden werden hier nicht geduldet.
Sorry, it's Bochum, not Rhine-Westphalia.
Borkum. It's Borkum. It's Borkum. It's written Borkum. Sorry.
What's it in German?
It means the Jews are not allowed. And you can see Jews are trying to enter, and the men say no. Please.
Before the Nazis.
Before the Nazis, before the First World War, it would say 1907. And this is the same. This is this is a hotel in Frankfurt, and it's in ISGAP-Oxford Judenfreies Hotel. It's an hotel with no Jews. You can be sure.
Jew-free.
Jew-free, Judenrein, and it's called, funny, New Jerusalem, theology of substitution. And then even, not only Jewish guests, but even, you know, how would you call these Jews trying to sell things? He will be expelled. And we have a lot of postcards like this, but of course this is not the case. And this is the difference between, I would say, the French, American, English model of nation and the German model. The German model is really like, you know, it's racial, Darwinist. You know. And this is a postcard imposing on German not to mix with inferior races. And this is the soldiers, maybe from Namibia, Southwest Africa. And this beautiful German marry a black. It's a catastrophe. Look, the children look like a mother, not like a father. And it's the same, you know, this beautiful German, he marry a Jew. And a catastrophe, look how the children, they don't look like him. So it means, this one means, please, respect more or less your race. Don't make mistakes like this. And this is even worse. It's a postcard, it's sell, you can buy it, etc. And the question, who looks more like the monkey? The Jew or the black? Good question, of course. And they say, well, you would say immediately the Neger. I'm sorry to use the word. You would say immediately the Neger. But no, it's the Jews. Well, even if he's dressed like us, like a bourgeois, in fact, well, the Jew is even more inferior than the black people. And this, you will find this kind of postcards by hundreds, by thousands. And so it means the Jews are, in a sense, the ideal scapegoat by which to explain the world's misfortune. And the famous sentence, die Juden sind unser Unglück, and this was, you know, on the Sturmer front page, so, etc., etc., etc. And this is the origin, I would say, of, and this is before Nazi, this is the postcards, and the men who bought the postcards, you see, it's obliterated, stamped. And it's called, die soziale Frage is zumeist a Judenfrage. Why do we need a war of class? We don't need. What we need is to take the money where it is. We have to manage a war against the Jews, not against the capitalists, the Germans, capitalists, etc. And this is a very important, and this is really the origin of, I would say, National Socialism, but it's before, because I think it's 1905, something like this, but we have no time. And so people say, no, people will say, out of Palestine. Why? You white people, why do white people are going in Palestine, but then they say go to Palestine. You. And so it means nach Palästina. Whether you're rich, poor, a child, and whatever it's going to cost. And this is like, it reminds us the Armenian genocide. When the Ottoman brought 1 million Christian Armenian in the desert, where they were all killed, etc. And this is the same there. Nach Palästina. It means Juden raus. It means the Jews, you foreign to Europe. This is the French one, and this is a German one. And what is interesting to see is, contrary to anti-Judaism, you don't despise the Jews for what they are, but for what they represent, modernity. Look, he shows modern capitalism. It's the modernity. Antisemitism is a discourse, a speech against modernity, against modernism. You see, modernism. It said, Français, Frenchman, le Juif, the Jew, this is our enemy. This is our enemy. It means, but it's not the Jew that we represent. It's not someone wearing a kippah or, reading the Bible. It's just a modern man. Antisemitism is a speech in crisis, in mutation time, and this postcard is a very interesting one. What does it show? It shows the process, as we have been told yesterday, a Gemeinschaft becoming a Gesellschaft. It means a traditional society becoming a modern society. Those are peasants from Brittany, Bretagne or Normandy whatsoever, and they refuse the law of the French Republic. And look, how does the French Republic, how does it look like the French Republic? Like a Jew republic. Republic, it's a Jewish invention, the Republic. And look, to enter the Republic, you have to fool, if it's the word,
Step over
the
Christ.
step over Christ. It means you have to abandon what makes France France. It means Christianity. And this is not, I would say, of course it's anti-Semitic, but especially it's an anti-modern speech. It means, and it's the same in the Arabic world. If we drink Coca-Cola, I will explain to you, it means we are Zionists, because we have to enter modernity. I will explain to you later. And this is actually saying, to accept, the condition of what is France today, it means taxes, centralization whatsoever, we have to become Jewish. And this is the origin of the protocol of the wild of Zion. Yeah.
The bat.
And the bat is the symbol of the Jews. Always. The bat's in the Middle Age. The bat, and even Dracula. The bat is like the gold sucker and the blood sucker. Remember. Always a connection between the blood and the Jews. And this is the Jewish bat. Ah yes, it's a good question. And it is the same, 1907, and it's the same. This is, I would say a drawing, what's the correct word that I know, 1907, it's written. And this is us, or this is US, under the hand of the Jews. And what is funny, what the Jews are responsible for, not for really Judaism, for democracy, gold standards, republicanism, and Wall Street pirate. History repeats itself, and then what Judas ought to do means kill himself. And this is also a good example to show that anti-Semitism is a fantasy, it's a discourse of mutation period. That's why, in society, like, the famous word, what went wrong, it's in those societies that you will find the peak of anti-Semitism. Another one, it's White Russian postcards. It's edited by white Russians, 1 million left Russia, and it's called, as you can see, the price of tolerance. We emancipated the Jews. Look, of course, responsible of the Soviet Revolution, etc. And how did they thank us? By giving us what? Not Judaism, but communism, Bolshevism, socialism, propaganda, finance, occultism, feminism, sweet labor, cinema press, and pacifism. You understand it? It doesn't concern the Jews as such.
Why a naked woman?
Because it's always Athena who will represent Britain. This is Britain, it's whether
White civilization.
and also, but not in white civilization. Athena, very often control of the sea. And this is Athena. it's well jumbled. Any country has its own representation. And so, to more or less to finish this part, Jews are responsible of the disaster, stabbing in the back. For instance, look, how to explain the defeat in 1918. This is the Hitler period. Of course, the German army couldn't lose the war. It's because of the Republic. But look how the Republic looks like a Jewish Republic. It's a Jewish Republic of Austria, which betrayed the beautiful soldiers. And you will find a lot of postcards of this kind. Deutschland, Totengrabe, and you see again, you see the Catholic and the socialists, but behind the Jews, behind the scene, is the Jews responsible for this, and this one is the same. German army, they're still there. The German army in November 1918, they were at 70 kilometers of Paris, 70 kilometers, and they lost the war. 70 kilometers. Why? Because of the Jews there, and the Bolshevik Jews, and of course a Catholic and a socialist, ever. So you understand the economy of anti-Semitism, and it worked. Hitler believed it, and it was of course extremely, the army were extremely happy of such a propaganda. The defeat was not of the responsibility. So, and radical anti-Semitism, then I will stop, I think, I will stop in 10 minutes, and then maybe 5 minutes, it's good. Then radical, and I will give you 10 minutes, okay. So, it's all wine in new bottles. And for me, but of course this is personal what I think, and it's a way to explain to my students the difference between, I would say normal, if you can say so, anti-Zionism and radical anti-Zionism. What is radical anti-Zionism is the Israeli and Zionists are hatred for what they are, or really are, a nation between the nation, a nation who build walls, why not? A nation occupying another nation. But for what they do not, it means kill children, or are not, evil creature with murderous practice, controlling capitalism, controlling United States of America, poisoning, Arafat was supposed to be poisoned, and it's a very old myth. It's the myth of Arafat being poisoned.
Like Muhammad.
Like Mohammed. I'm sorry. And killing systematically Palestinian children and committing a genocide. This is the difference. If you are against the government, okay. If you are religious and you believe that only the Messiah could, bring back the Jewish people to Israel, why not? You are not an anti-Semite. But if you believe that Israel is responsible of the misfortune of the world, this is radical anti-Zionism, and this is anti-Semitism, because this is absurd, and this is how I show it to my students. Very, very quickly. I do this. I show that nowadays, the traditional anti-Semitic discourses that we had in France and Germany in the 19th, 20th century is now, I would say, the trend in Arabic countries. They believe that MacDonald is a Jewish Zionist, and I use a lot of memory. Memory is, oh my God, it's wonderful memory. That MacDonald is Jewish, it's not kosher, but it's Jewish. Why? Because it's a modern product. What is modern is by definition Jewish. Drink Coca-Cola is to support Israel. Coca-Cola has no link whatever
Which
with
year
Israel.
which year
This is 10 years ago.
10 years?
Yeah. Pepsi-Cola means pay every pence to save Israel. It's a Zionist, product. And this is I tried to show you, but I couldn't. It's on memory. I've got it in Brussels, but unfortunately it's 30 seconds, and it's really, in a sense, anti-Semitism. It's, how to say, you can laugh how absurd it is. Pokemon is Jew. There were 3 fatwas against Pokemon. Because Pokemon, that Pikachu is yellow. It's like a yellow star. So the ambassador, the Japanese ambassador in Amman had to say that Pokemon meant pocket monster, not Jew in Japanese. This is a very funny thing, if I have time. Gaddafi is Jew. And this is why the syncretism. This is based on extreme right. You know that, what is his name? Baghdadi is a Jew. You know that Baghdadi is a Jew? He's an agent of the Mossad. And look, And this is Meta News, it's an extreme right website, and it's called Simon Elliott, alias El Baghdadi, who is a Jew and from the Mossad. And honestly, the poor man, I don't know who he is, but I don't think he will live long. And this you can find on the internet, of course. And this is extreme right. It's not a Muslim website. They are connected. It's a syncretism. You know that Morsi was Jew? But also Al-Sisi. Mother Al-Sisi she's Jewish. And this is a Savoir la Vérité Palestine, and this is a Muslim and a Juif, a Jew behind all the massacre in Egypt. And it's Al-Sisi. And this is how he looked like, really. You know? In fact, he was a Hasid.
Excuse me, it was written Sisinyahu in Arabic.
Siciliano. Okay. Of course, Tony Blair. Tony Blair is a Satanic racist Jewish war criminal. This is a Christian holy war. It's a extreme right Christian side. This is Bernard-Henri Lévy, you all know. It's a fascist, neo-fascist group in Paris. Warmongers, responsible of the war in Libya. And this is, Ukraine is run by miserable Jews. Rebel chief, pro-Russian said about, the wars between Russia and Ukraine. This is an American representation, and you can see the real face of Obama and Netanyahu. And Rothschild monster, go it must die, kill, 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 and this is extreme right, of course. It's called dies, and it's very well done, actually. And even, the comic strip, the drawings against Muhammad, the Danish one, who are responsible? The Jews. The one who draws against Muhammad, he's linked to Judaism. And you can see that anti-Zionism is not this kind of anti-Zionism. Radical anti-Zionism is definitely anti-Semitic. And what do the Arabs has against the Jews? Exactly like the French 19th century. The Jews give freedom and democracy milk in Denmark. The Jews are responsible, they're the agent of modernity. This is an Arabic, you can read it.
It's specially made for the Arab countries.
Exactly.
So Israel put poison.
Yeah. Again, the old myth, and always the star, and of course the Nazi, And this is in Belgium. It was during the last war between the Gaza and Israeli, and this is a cafe, and it was written, this restaurant is forbidden to dogs, but also to Zionists. And it was written in Turk, Yahud, Jews. Jews and Turks, it's there, Yahud, and then of course they know you cannot say Jews, or in French they say Zionist. But Yahud was in Turk. And this is incredible, this is in Belgium, It's like, it reminds us, the cafe forbidden to Jews in Germany. And this is a very funny thing, it's in a Belgian newspaper, and I don't know how many years ago it was, actually it's written there.
2010.
Yes, it was in 2010, there were some, les requins, sharks who were killing German tourists. Killing German tourists in Sinai. And then the Ministry of Tourism said that those sharks were trained by Mossad to kill German tourists. And this is terrible. And the problem is that in our press, they didn't make love of it. They just say, okay, according to the Ministry of Tourism, Mossad trained, sharks to kill tourists. Les espions du Mossad auraient, touristes selon ces accusations, libéré le requin, etc. You mean and you see that it's conspirational theory. It's absurd. It's funny. But this brings to the Holocaust, those kind of rumors. And this is also very strange. Remember the FIFA, the fact that FIFA was totally corrupted with Sepp Blatter, and then Sport of Spain, former FIFA vice president Jack Warner, who was from West Indies, I think, has blamed Zionism for the circumstances that led to him and former Asian Football Confederation chief Mohammed Ahmed being forced out of world football. Zionism is responsible of the, I would say, FIFA corruption. You understand? And it's funny, and this is very funny.
What means Coca-Cola? It has nothing to do with Israel this time, but it's just to show that anti-Semitism is a paranoia, or I would say anti-Christianity is a paranoia. Look what Coca-Cola means really. You can find out in the internet.
And so I will stop the next one, because I will have to drink, and I will show you why you shouldn't eat any more tomatoes if you're a good Muslim. Never anymore.
So you understand the difference between neurosis and psychosis. You know, tomatoes is to transform a good Muslim into a bad Christian. They put cross in tomatoes, the Christian.
I have to say something in Arabic.
Yeah.
I said that the woman in Palestine saw Muhammad and he told her this.
Ah, it's even better. So, okay, I will stop here, thanks.
Thank you.
I've got the following.